Welcome back to Ceasefire Podcast, episode 20, part 2, Can AI Be Stopped? And we'd like to use part 2 to weigh in from our own personal convictions and beliefs about, good night, what could this mean for the future? I even sort of made mention at the end there of, it just makes me think of some of the philosophical lectures I've been listening to, and some of the argumentation about it. There must be a first cause. There's not an eternal regression of causes, and I'm thinking about the eternal progression of causes that's going to come from AI just compounding on itself. Because I made a joke once that the first time a 3D printer prints a 3D printer, that would be the birth of Skynet. And what if that's essentially what's going to happen here is these AI systems will develop other AI systems. What do we do with this as people of faith, as people that believe that there is a God, that we live in an orderly created existence, and now we have AI?
Counter question: have you used Chat GPT?
I have.
I haven't used it. I'm scared of it. Tell me about it.
Okay, so we were using it to think through ways to use it in the YouTube world. Hey, ChatGPT, write a video description for a video about this, right? Include top keywords, right? And I asked it to write me a 9-paragraph summary of what a certain philosopher believed. I was like, what did St. Augustine believe about truth? It was remarkable because I had just listened to the lectures. So like I knew, okay, I'm not going to have time to go fact check this and go get a book about Augustine. So I knew what it would say if it was right. And it was pretty much on the money. So you got to think about what that could mean for people writing research papers or...
I was just going to go there. Let's talk about education for a minute. Okay. My kids are being homeschooled right now. And I'm right now at this moment as we're recording this episode. And something I think about on a daily basis is how different the world that they are coming up in is from the one that we did.
Yeah.
And how much things have changed and how rapidly things are changing right now. Let's talk about this and take a step back for a minute and realize that each of us has literally in the palm of our hands, in our pocket, a tiny supercomputer with a screen that is the culmination of all of the information that mankind has learned about everything.
Right.
Is education even going to be necessary for humans moving forward, or what will it look like?
Yeah.
Because think about how many things have basically become obsolete just in the last decade or the last couple of decades. We start thinking about the fact that we don't use landlines anymore. We don't write in cursive anymore. We rarely read physical books anymore. Physical media in general is going away. When we're talking about AI now, we're talking about all of the jobs that are going to be eliminated by this. A lot of creative jobs, man. Holy cow. Whether we're talking about writing, graphic design. I remember when Midjourney dropped, a few months back, 6 months ago or whenever that was, there was an outcry of graphic designers saying this is going to annihilate our freaking careers. And it's true. It is. This stuff is moving at a pace that we cannot keep up with, and it's just going to keep increasing. But what we're talking about here, bringing it back to your question, is mankind assembling all of his knowledge to make and create his greatest innovation, artificial intelligence. I'm almost quoting the Matrix verbatim here. What is artificial intelligence? It is mankind's greatest expression. It's our version of playing God, basically. Whereas mankind is God's greatest expression, ours is the culmination of all of the information that we have assembled collectively throughout our history, i.e., the Tower of Babel. So it all comes back to this. And, when you think of, apocalyptic scenarios and you think of civilization converging, traditionally, artificial intelligence has not been a part of that equation when you look back through church history and the prevailing sort of theological premises in interpreting the book of Revelation, the book of Daniel, and such. And yet here we are, we're kind of off the grid biblically here. And we're talking about stuff that isn't necessarily even in there. Unless you're talking about military standoffs that come as a result of artificial intelligence, which may be what John was witnessing back then on Patmos. I mean, there's so many angles to this, bro. I don't even know where to start, but I do know that if you believe in the things that the Bible talks about, especially about the end of civilization, there is an end game here. And time itself is finite in terms of humanity. How much can this continue to build and gain speed before we reach, whether it's singularity or whether it's God intervening? We're really, the more we talk about this, the more we think about this, the more I think about this. I just wrote a freaking double album about this stuff. We're there. It's upon us. All of this stuff is upon us. It's real. The Skynet, all of it. It's real. We're dealing with it right now. And it's freaking scary, man. I don't even know where to go with this conversation other than to say that, for starters, at least.
Well, there are even people who would look at the book of Revelation. For those of you that might not know what you were referring to when you talked about John and the island of Patmos, he's talking about the book of Revelation in the Bible. There are people that view that, I don't actually know what camp I'm in because I've not done enough research, but there are people that believe that was referring to a bunch of stuff that happened back then. Downfall of Rome and all of the fighting and stuff that happened. And let's just say that is what Revelation was talking about. It's hard not to see the cyclical nature of history anyway. So even if John was talking about what happened back then, it's so hard not to say that, like he says in True Detective, that time is a flat circle. Like we just keep sort of repeating the same cycles of we get to a certain point and then a reset button somewhere gets pressed because we go too far, or we get too big, or we get too powerful. Whether it's Tower of Babel or the Roman Empire, you almost sense a cycle in history of we get too close, we fly too close to the sun. And when I look at AI, the thing about it that is, it's not scary. Like if suddenly a political leader got on, on the 6 o'clock news and said, in the next 60 minutes, we are going to be dropping nuclear weapons on such and such a country. Like that would be terrifying. That would change the globe forever. It would change the world as we know it. Like that would be scary. That would almost be so big and daunting. It would seem surreal. It would seem like we were suddenly in a movie, or like, the movies like Armageddon and stuff where like there's a meteor, right? It's going to hit Earth and, half the population of Earth's going to be wiped out. That would almost be too big to even fathom. This is in like another category because this is unknown. We have no idea. It's not like, a war is going to start, or this is going to happen. There's going to be a fight, and there's unknowns there, but at least it's working within the confines of things that are familiar, things that we've seen and experienced before, even though they're scary, treacherous, awful, or violent. We sort of know what to expect. Even in the realm of when there's like a violent shooting or something, like it's scary and awful, but it kind of is contained within reality. This almost seems otherworldly, alien, foreign. It seems like it's outside of reality right now because we don't know what direction it's going to go. Because the compounding effect here of AI is that it's in a matter of just months, it's not just widespread, it's affecting entire ecosystems of creation. It's like it's spreading like a virus if you really think about it. Like AI is spreading like a virus. So you're already seeing software come out. Adobe already launched a piece of software in beta that essentially does this. It just harnesses AI to create images. And so this infection and this disease, like any sort of, I guess you could call it a virtual pandemic, if it's going to spread at the rate that it's spreading, then no financial sector, no commercial sector is safe. You have no idea what it's going to touch and then what it's going to do when it's get there. It could blow some financial sectors up in good ways. It could completely decimate others in other ways. And
now,
as a Christian, you have to look at it and say, I mean, God's in control, but that doesn't mean everything that happens is awesome and great. There can be terrible things that come from this.
You and I both are talking about this thing as if we are convinced that it is a virus, a plague, Skynet, the end of the world, all of it. And yet we're probably in the minority.
Right. Yeah,
Talk about
might sound crazy.
Why do you think this, is there any part of you that would think this is more of a good thing than a bad thing? And why do you think it's a bad thing, if so?
So when something is industry disruptive, like the iPhone or the home computer, there's a natural adoption process. People have to sort of get it and learn it, and then the world kind of shapes itself around it. Have you ever seen like when a tree grows and slowly over time it wraps itself around something?
Mm-hmm.
There's almost an organic nature to it because humans interact with it. So like there's more of an organic touch point of we're interacting with cell phones, we're weaving it into our life, and then it has ramifications. We have been permanently affected as a species by the very things that we've created. Like cell phones have completely changed us.
Mm-hmm.
This is happening so fast that we can't even conceive of what is actually happening.
Right.
It's almost like when you have a car accident. It happens so fast, you don't even truly remember or can recollect exactly what happened. Like you have bits and pieces because it was just too fast and or scary. And I think that's about this is what sort of scares me. I'm not sort of trying to be doomsday. Oh my gosh, like this is actually going to bring about the destruction of mankind. I mean, it could, but I just see it spreading so quickly that you're just like, I don't know. Are the bank systems going to get destroyed in 6 months because of this? Like, I don't know. I mean, it's the infection is so quick. It's touching virtually everything. It's going to affect the way video games are made. It's probably going to affect the way that we have news reported to us. It's going to affect the very things that are already infection points of like we already use social media, we already use all these things. Even those systems will be affected by AI.
Mm-hmm. And affected is probably not even an intense enough word. Transformed.
Yep.
Transformed. Very nature and fabric of existence transformed. I don't want to come off like we've watched too many sci-fi films or read too many sci-fi books.
Yeah.
But where I always go in these types of discussions is the nature of man. There are two sides of that argument. Brought this up before. There's a camp, philosophical camp, probably the more prevailing viewpoint is that man's inherent nature is good. We make mistakes, but ultimately good prevails. And I would suggest that in looking at history, you can disprove that premise very easily, specifically in the realm of innovation. I don't know if you've read a lot of Marshall McLuhan, but talked a lot about medium as the massage, about the advent of new technologies and new, specifically communication channels and platforms, and how that affects us. And basically the conclusion there is we always jump to the next as a species, the next thing that makes our lives easier or faster or more convenient, and it's always at the consequence of our mental health, society's fabric in terms of our interconnectedness, and our relationships in general. And we've seen, we're watching society become increasingly fragmented, and it is the direct result of technology. It is the direct result of the interconnectivity of information that we have. We talk about social media, but it's really, we're talking about the internet. The ability to communicate with the ability for everyone to communicate together all at once and share information in real time. Not just information personally, but the culmination of all information that our species has discovered and implemented. So I would make the argument that if, and not to be doomsday again, but if man is in, it's a syllogism. It's if A equals B and B equals C, then A must equal C. If mankind is not inherently good, if A equals B and B equals C, and if AI is the ultimate expression of a fallen creature, an inherently selfish creature, then A must equal C, and this is going to be bad.
Well, as I was listening to a lot of the philosophical lectures that have put me on to, some of the foundational belief differences, like if you really break it down, what you're saying is not held by a lot of people. So, the history of sort of some of the fractured beliefs, even in the Christian church, there was sort of the Pelagian idea that humanity is basically good. And
that is the prevailing view throughout philosophical history and the prevailing view of culture, I think.
Yeah. Well, and I believe I was listening to one of the lectures, and he referenced Wealth of Nations, and he said that in that book you can sort of track the more Pelagian beliefs got interwoven into societal structures and governments, the more tyrannical the governments became, because the belief was, well, man is essentially good, so we just need the right systems, the right structures. We just need the government to take care of everything, and you ended up with more tyrannical governments. So the irony and the actual thing that I would be concerned about is if you're coming from a Pelagian foundation of like people are inherently good, like so AI is an extension of us, and if we structure it in an inherently good way, this is great, right? And then what? No, you're going to hand all the power over to it, or you're going to let it handle certain things, and you're going to relinquish so much of the control that we probably need to keep society running, right? You need personal responsibility, a belief in morals, a belief in good and evil, a belief in truth. So a Pelagian foundation, or a belief that people are inherently good, if that's at your core and this is an outpouring of that, that to me is actually more worrisome than if you have people saying, listen, people are not inherently good. Look at the history of civilization. Look at the last 48 hours of the news cycle, I don't know, any day of the week, and you can't come to that conclusion. If you think technology is going to be salvific, if it is going to save us from ourselves, I don't know why you would think that at this point. We are drenched in technology. We're drenched in it, and it hasn't changed us. If anything, it's magnified the problems within. You can't blame hate and trollish and wicked behavior online. You want to blame it on anonymity? No. All you're actually doing is, I think anonymity on the internet is a microscope into the heart of man.
Absolutely.
So I don't think you can substantiate a Pelagian belief here. And if you can't substantiate a Pelagian belief, you have to come from another foundational rule set. You don't even be a Christian to believe that man is not inherently good, and therefore we should be very cautious about what that man creates, because our fingerprints, our DNA will be all over this. Now, we as Christians would say we bear God's image, and in bearing God's image, there are things about us that sort of emanate from him: goodness, creativity, right? Like having a will and having a way of thinking and a spirit, and like, so we sort of reflect his image in that way. And in the same way, AI is going to reflect our image, and there's a lot in our image that's jacked up. And I think that's where there should be a lot of caution and a lot of careful calculation in how this proceeds, because if it's a reflection of all of us and all of what makes us up, I think there's just a lot of risk and a lot of darkness that could get baked into it, a lot of selfishness and pride. And it is the new Tower of Babel. So I'm going to give it to you for final thoughts so we can wrap.
Man, we're just touching on it all. And I can't help but thinking about the contrast and really how it's linked to the fundamental philosophy about the nature of man of the two prevailing worldviews on economic systems. And I want to read you a quick article from Forbes magazine, or a little bit of it. It's wrong to say that America was founded by capitalists. In fact, America was founded by socialists who had the humility to learn from their initial mistakes and embrace freedom. One of the earliest and arguably most historically significant North American colonies was Plymouth Colony, founded in 1620, and what is now known as Plymouth, Massachusetts. Author writes, as I've outlined in greater detail here before, he's referencing a different article. The original colony had written into its charter a system of communal property and labor. As William Bradford recorded in his Of Plymouth Plantation, a people who had formerly been known for their virtue and hard work became lazy and unproductive. Resources were squandered, vegetables were allowed to rot on the ground, and mass starvation was the result. And where there is starvation, there is plague. After 2.5 years, the leaders of the colony decided to abandon their socialist mandate and create a system which honored private property. The colony survived and thrived, and the abundance which resulted was what was celebrated at that iconic Thanksgiving feast. And of course, America has flourished under capitalistic principles, which assume man's what? Inherent selfishness.
That's
so
right.
You take a basket of Halloween candy and you put it out in front of your house because you don't want to hand out the candy. Big basket of candy, and you put a sign behind it that says, take one each. What is going to happen? Guaranteed in every neighborhood in the world.
Somebody,
you tell me.
Somebody eventually is going to take all of it. Yeah.
Somebody's going to take all of it. Yeah. And it's not going to take that long. Well, you might get through a handful of kids who obey the rule, but somebody abusing that is pretty much guaranteed. It's our fundamental nature to be selfish. It's our fundamental nature to be flawed, to use a Christian word out of the Bible, sinful.
Yeah.
And to develop systems, whether they are technological systems, apps which are sentient, or economic systems based upon our inherent goodness, is a fallacy. And history has proven it over and over and over and over and over again. So for me to think that anything, well, there will be good takeaways from artificial intelligence, but the more reliant we become upon our technology, our greatest expression of an attempt to be our own God, let's put it in factual terms or actual terms, the more of a liability it's going to become, all of this innovation. And that's why I make the argument that the more that the physical world becomes subordinate to the digital one, the more our actual worlds or selves or our identities or lives will become strained or dissonant or distance from our actual what's the word? Intended purpose. Let's put it that way. So we're witnessing a world emerge that is going to have an increased amount of labor pains in the short term, and who knows what in the long term. That's my closing statement. It's a dire one. It's not a light one, but the hope is there's a true God that exists outside of the innovation and the motivation of mankind, and we believe in him. I'm really curious to see how he responds to all of this.
Yeah, there's a first cause, and it's not a cold mechanical one. It's a personal one, and I think that that's comforting in light of just how cold and calculated this next eternal progression of causes will be as AI spins up. And where it goes, well, we don't know. We're going to go debrief. If you want to watch a debrief of behind the scenes, talk about how we felt the episode went, as well as an opportunity for you to be a part of the show, maybe just by influencing it or suggesting ideas, ceasefirepodcast.com. Smash all the buttons, smash all the likes. We'll see you in the next one. We hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for watching Ceasefire.